Good morning, folks. Welcome. This is a different session. I think it's the first time at the Global Summit that we're going to be talking about starting your own business. So the folks that aspire to start your own business in the supply chain space, the topic was, how do we empower those entrepreneurs? And instead of going through a list of challenges and how to solve, we thought, why not bring experienced entrepreneurs here? So I'm really excited to present this panel today, which ranges from well-experienced, successful entrepreneurs all the way to a few of us who are new to it in the last five plus years. So it's going to be exciting. Plus, we'll also talk about some international perspective on this. Without further ado, let's get started. So, gentlemen, if you don't mind introducing yourselves, that'd be great.
Good afternoon. I'm Todd Marks, founder and CEO of Mindgrub Technologies, a company I started 20 years ago. We make mobile apps, websites, and perform marketing.
Hi, I'm Elliott Darvish. I'm the co-founder, COO, and CFO of Switch. Switch is an accessories rental membership where you can borrow any piece from our collection starting at $45 a month, hold on to it as long as you want, exchange it as often as you want. We currently offer jewelry and we carry brands from companies such as Chanel, Hermes, Gucci, and Dior, and we're launching handbags later this year. We are aiming to revolutionize the luxury space.
Good afternoon. I'm Ignacio Benitez Landa. I am from Mexico City, and I'm the project director of EDS, is Expert Delivery Service. It's a carrier company based in Mexico City and doing business cross-border to Nissan Corporation, basically. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ochi, and I came from a family of entrepreneurs, and there were 5 boys in my family, and all were entrepreneurs except me. I went to work for a number of businesses, and finally, when I got the opportunity, at least I recognized it as an opportunity to start a business. I joined 6 guys, and 7 of us started a business, and we grew it to $5 billion in sales, over $100 million in profits, net profits, and I'm retired now. So my perspective is going to be backwards rather than forwards of most of the panel members, but hopefully we can give you some insight on what I'm not discounting luck, because luck is a huge part of entrepreneurship, but luck comes out of hard work and seeing opportunity.
Thank you, Gene. And I'm Manish Kapoor, founder and CEO of 2 companies. Actually, we have a booth downstairs, Advatix and Expedel. And Gene and I are also on the board for this program at USC. It's amazing, Gene and I were talking about our stories and just a few years behind, but there was lots of similarities. I was at Amazon and FedEx, and later in the stage decided to start these companies 5 years ago. It's been challenging and rewarding at the same time. So we'll talk about our experiences overall. Where I'd like to start is that first moment you decide to jump in, right? So if you don't mind sharing, let's talk about what really inspired you to go on your own. What was that first day when you felt, okay, I got to start something on my own? What happened? What was the inspiration at that point? Todd?
I guess I'll start. So in the 90s, I was a high school teacher, and the internet was happening in 99, 2000. And my kayaking partner at the time showed me Macromedia Flash, which later became Adobe and later disappeared. And I thought it was a really good platform for making online education. So quit my teaching job and started my first company back then. But really my motivation was my kids and my family. So I was a high school teacher. I had my 2nd kid out the door. I now have 7 kids. And so it was the disruption of the internet that, made me think I might be able to afford my family. But, it really does take, as I've said before, it takes experience, it takes disruption to really get a business off the ground, but it absolutely takes that perseverance. And if you have an out, you'll take the out. So in my case, I had a bunch of mouths to feed, and in 99, 2000, I started a business. In 2002, I started a business. 2005, And then finally, when the iPhone came out, that was a time that I had literally my 10 years, 10,000 hours. I graduated college in 98, and this was 2008 when they released the SDK. And I was working in New York and Chicago at the time. My family was back in Baltimore, Maryland. I had 4 kids at the time, and I think they were all going crazy without me. So I needed to be home, and the iPhone came out, and that was a disruption I needed. And I quit my day job and started making mobile apps in my basement.
That's awesome. Thank you, Todd. Elliott?
Yeah, so that's a really cool story, by the way. So my mom, the inspiration for Switch actually came from my mom. So my mom started designing jewelry as a hobby after our father passed away, and that hobby turned into a business for her. And naturally, my brother and I helped her and got involved. And a few years ago, we were at one of her trunk shows, and we saw her sell a necklace to her friend. A few days later, we saw that same friend wear the necklace to a wedding, and she was beaming and she was bragging about how the necklace was making her feel. And then at the next trunk show, she comes back and returns the necklace. And my mom, no questions asked, accepts the refund, gives her her money back. And after the show, my brother and I were fuming at her. We said, how can you accept the return? She got her use out of it, and we'll never forget these words. She said, don't worry, it's not really used, it's jewelry. And that was the light bulb moment for us, where we realized that jewelry is the perfect product for this access economy model. It's a high ticket item. It's durable, it's small, so it's easy to store, easy to ship. You have fewer sizing issues. And from there, that was a natural extension for us to expand from jewelry into other luxury accessories. And that's how Switch was born. And I've been doing that ever since for the past 5 years.
Yes, I graduated from Fresno State University in viticulture and enology. And those days, everything was new. In Mexico, we had vineyards with my family. So we started a winery, and I had, the big risk was to bring the cuttings of the wines, Cabernet Sauvignon, and all the varietals to Mexico, but there wasn't any in those days yet. So all the experience that I started getting on the logistics was in that end. I had to bring the cuttings from California, planning to Mexico, and started a winery. And it was a challenge because we had to buy everything from the beginning, barrels, all the equipment to make the high proof and the wines in Mexico. So you have to be very careful on every step you take. When you decide to start a new business or a new venture, because there's a lot of regulations. First of all, in the agricultural side and on the government side also. So if you decide to jump into a new business, you have to be, like I say, very careful on all the regulations that you have to take step by step.
Gene, what was your inspiration?
Well,
I know it was a while back, but
as I listen to everybody, the one thing that I hear as a common thread is there was some kind of pain or disruption. And people that start business and entrepreneurs is they use that pain and discomfort to empower them. A lot of people use that to shrink and go into their shell and repeat the exact same pattern that they had that got them into the disruption in the first place. Entrepreneurs have this special feeling that says, I'm going to take that opportunity and that learning experience, and I'm going to transform it into something I can learn and grow. And that's what an entrepreneur is about, is they're constantly trying to learn and grow. And when I think about my own experience, the worst thing in your life, if you think you're a high-flying executive, is to get fired. And yet that happened to me when I was about, I think about 41. And my brothers kept telling me, you're not in control. You're not in control when you don't own your own business. You're at the whim of somebody else. So the shame of being fired put me into a real funk. And I was going, what the heck? Here I thought I was a high flyer. I did everything right. And yet I just got canned. So, but fortunately I was canned with 6 other guys who also were in the business. And we had tried a management buyout of the company, and the board and the owners didn't like what we did. So that's why we all got fired. But in the end, that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because it forced me and I think all the other entrepreneurs to relook at where they were and say, is this really where I want to be, and continue that pattern. I was offered a job as VP of marketing for international marketing for FedEx. And my wife goes, take it. This is great. And somehow that didn't fit, that experience and that shame of being fired. I didn't ever want to go through that again. So I think everybody has these discomforts. And as an entrepreneur, you have to figure out, how do you get your boots back on, stand back up, take that as a learning experience and move forward, because there is always growth on the other side of pain and discomfort.
So is that employer kicking themselves now?
I'm sorry?
Is your previous employer kicking themselves now?
Well, let me tell you, it took us about 5 years, and we overtook them in size. And, you know, we weren't big spenders. One of our values was to be fiscally sound and careful with our money. It was the first time I drank Dom Perignon.
So Gene, some similarities there as well. Similar in my case, 4 generations of entrepreneurs in the family. I broke away, 25 years in corporate. I kept launching things for others, including FedEx same-day delivery and Amazon home delivery. Kept thinking about, at what point can I take the plunge? I think I've actually met many people here yesterday and today who have full-time jobs, and either they're doing something else on the side or they are thinking about starting on their own. I did the same. And similar to Gene, I was in a situation where the business wasn't doing well, the company that I was working for, and they laid off a whole bunch of people. I was part of that. I took that as an opportunity to finally take the plunge. It's scary in the beginning, and especially if you have family and kids. But looking back, that's the best decision I made. And like Gene was saying, it was pain made it happen. At the same time, in my case, I was seeing a lot of opportunity as well, because e-commerce is booming, and there are so many young e-commerce companies that were needing help. And I was able to fortunately pull a strong, experienced team together. We just started helping companies scale up. So that's how I started here as well. Since we are at a supply chain summit, and supply chain touches all of us, all our businesses, it'd be great if you can share with the group how supply chain impacts or is critical for your business.
Yeah, in a couple of ways. We do happen to work with a lot of manufacturers, and we help them with digital transformation to essentially automate their supply chain and to really focus on data and analytics. But then even for my own company, COVID made the world very flat. We hadn't been outsourcing or using nearshoring at that point, but there's tremendous amount of talent all over the world. So to stay more competitive and to get some margin back, we've started to now leverage a lot of different pockets in the world to get development done.
And for Switch, we have a very unique business model in that we kind of need to have enough jewelry to get people through the door, but you want to also maximize how much you're renting out. So having that optimized balance is kind of the magic formula for the success of our business. So having a global supply chain where we can get our goods from places from all over the world, but get them not in a matter of weeks, but a matter of days, and then get them up on our website and get them to our customer is extremely critical. And then we have this other unique aspect of our business where we are expecting about 100% of our items to get returned. So when the customer sends back their piece, we need to get that rented to another customer too. So the customer is a part of the supply chain also. So making sure we have good software, good foresight, a good experience, getting the goods in quickly, getting them cleaned, getting them stored, and then getting them out again is a very big part of our process and a big part of our success.
I think there are a number of companies in the circular economy. That's the definition for that, which is rental businesses. You may have heard of companies like Rent the Runway, Black Tux on the mail side. And then I think Elliott's business is on those lines. A lot of opportunity. We'll see a lot of those rental businesses in the near future in the industry. Ignacio?
Yes, well, we supply all the automotive industry, like I say, with Nissan in Smyrna, in Tennessee, and in Missouri. And we had to bring a lot of loads from Aguascalientes, which is a city in Mexico. So we have to deal every day with just-on-time deliveries. And it's very, very delicate because we have on the contract that if we don't arrive on time to the plant in Nissan, we are penalized with a lot of money per minute because we stop the lines. So we have to be very careful in all the line, from Aguascalientes to be on time to cross the border, which is very important with custom brokers, all the papers they have to be on the right time, and the drivers, since there is a limitation in the United States for the driving is only 6 hours and they have to relax. We have to get a team drivers also to deliver all the parts to the Nissan plants. So it's a very, very important timing on this kind of business. If you ever encounter, any job in any logistics or company that has to do with the automotive industry.
Well, I'm kind of listening to these themes that everybody's giving, and I want to take it up one level in terms of discussion, because if you listen to everybody and how supply chain plays in, it's the actual delivery of your product to your target client. And if you don't understand who your target client is in the beginning, I call that the ideal client profile. If you don't know who you're serving and how to monetize it, you don't have a business. And if you don't deliver what you promise, you don't have a business. And when we started our business in 92, we spent a lot of time on our vision, and we were obviously in transportation. And our vision was we deliver customer promises. That was it. Now I see a lot of other companies taking that on and things, but the concept that we were delivering value to our customers by helping them keep their promises. And so when you talk about who is your ideal client profile, how do you monetize that by servicing them? That's a critical piece. And supply chain is the piece that is the delivery of how you do that.
Absolutely. Actually, I have a question for the audience here as well. By show of hand, who all are actually already thinking about it or might have already started something on your own full-time or part-time? Quite a few. Okay, great. So Gene, maybe next question, if you can help, which is, we have a few folks here. What are some of the traits that are required for an entrepreneur to succeed when you're starting?
Well, typically in school, we've all been taught a very deep understanding of a subject. It might be supply chain, it might be engineering, it might be physics or chemistry or physical ed, whatever it is, but it's very deep this way. Universities aren't very good at teaching breadth. And when you're an entrepreneur, your idea may come from the depth you learned, but to run a business, it's the breadth of your knowledge and your skills. It's managing people. It's communicating to them. It's motivating to them. It's rewarding. It's reinforcing. It's discipline. It's finance. And every businessman that I know really understands the cash to cash cycle, because that's the bread of your business. You could have a very successful business, but if you don't know how to manage that cash and turn it into your ability to grow, then you have to go into the market and borrow money. So cash flow is so critical to that. So there's a bunch of things that you better have knowledge about. And the best way is to understand all these processes. So if you understand the cash to cash cycle, for example, you know that if, well, let me use the example of Dell versus IBM. Dell had a very positive cash flow. How did they do it? Their accounts payable were, or their machines were bought by consumers who use credit cards. So what did how much, I'm sorry, accounts receivable. How many days of accounts receivable do you think they held when somebody ordered it and they paid with a credit card? How many days of accounts receivable? 0. Okay, so now they've got $2,000 for a computer. Now they don't hold any inventory and they made their suppliers supply it. So then they build it and within 3 days to 7 days. And how long do you think that so they have 3 to 7 days of inventory. How long do you think they extended their suppliers out for payment? 45, 90 days. So
Yeah.
7 days of inventory, 60 days of accounts payable. They have 67 days of cash flow I'm sorry, they have 7 days of inventory, 0 days of accounts receivable against 60 days of credit. So now they have all this money that they can use to fund their business. IBM was just the opposite business model. They would give their clients 60 to 90 days credit. They would assemble the thing, which was the inventory, for 60 days, and then they would pay their vendors in 30 days. So instead, they had to finance their growth. And one of the hardest things, if you're going to grow, there's only 2 ways to get the capital. You either borrow it or you generate it through your cash flow. And so when I talk about understanding the width of the business, understand the process, and understand how you make money, because if, as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to learn multiple processes and how to manage those.
You can also raise money also. In
Well,
addition,
okay,
Yeah.
it's essentially borrowing for equity.
right. But but borrowing is more so you have to pay it back.
Back.
That's why, that's the big distinction, right?
Yeah.
All right, I think same question, Todd. You have multiple businesses. You've been doing this for a few years. Traits for a successful entrepreneur. If you want to jump in, who do you need to be, or what kind of
Yeah, it's
skill sets are required?
it's absolutely perseverance. I was a little bit of a mischievous youth, and my parents sent me to a survival camp in Canada. But they would run you through the ringer there. We were on the Ottawa River, and it was, lightning strikes, and we couldn't find a campsite. And, we ended up, basically sleeping on a shoreline one night. And it seemed like the hardest thing I'd ever done at the time. And, it was somewhat life-threatening. But it really kind of, built up my perseverance. And so when you do run a business, like every day there's a lightning strike. Every day you're trying to figure out what tree to camp under, right? And you have to every single day persevere and get through it. And I had mentioned earlier, if there's an out, or if you don't, have a strong backbone, you're going to take that out, because it is one of the most difficult things you've ever done.
Elliott, anything that you wanna add
Sure.
to that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like a lot of the qualities that you hear, whether it's talking to people or like listening to podcasts or reading, I think they're all true. Resiliency for sure is one of them. Having a strong work ethic, having a good attitude, like staying positive while things might be feeling like they're crashing down. For me, having a really strong attention to detail. So at 1 decimal point, one spelling error can cost you a lot, but I wouldn't say this is as much a trait. It's more so an attitude, really embracing uncertainty. When you go at it alone, things are gonna go not according to plan. It's just a fact. And really understanding that and controlling what you can control and being okay with what you can't is gonna help you succeed quite a bit. We've seen this a lot, and we saw it especially in the past 2 years. We had a pandemic that affected every single person in this room. And if you had a business that was like really affected by the pandemic, like ours, where people weren't going out, so they didn't have a use case for borrowing jewelry, you have to be okay with just things going haywire and realizing it's going to change. Every day will be something different, and having that attitude, embracing the uncertainty, I think is a very good recipe for success.
And I can relate to some of that as well, especially when I made the transition only 5 years ago from corporate to on my own. And I think it's a shielded life when you're working for a large company, because you're dealing with your job, you've got your functional area that you're responsible for. Somebody else is taking care of the day-to-day. It's almost like ocean waves, it's calm under, but there's a lot of turbulence above. The biggest switchover that when I made, like Gene was saying, I was forced to do things that I'd never done before. I hated reading contracts before, legal contracts, right, details. I didn't have a choice. Now I had to read it. I had to actually write some as well, because now I had to explain my lawyer, what am I looking for? I'd never done QuickBooks, never even knew how accounting is done, because I'm an engineer by training. I had to learn that. Never done sales before. Got into marketing, right? So those are all the challenges, but it was a fascinating, fast learning as well. And in my case, I just got hooked onto it. I can't go back anymore. It was any other normal job now would be so boring once you do that. Having said that, a lot of challenges, like the panel is sharing, every day it's a new storm, and you have to be okay with that. And first couple of years, it was hard to go to sleep at night, because small things would rattle me. But then you realize, hey, this is normal. You gotta get used to it. And small problems, big problems. The way I tell my team as well as, hey, business is solving problems on a daily basis. If you don't have problems, you don't have a business. And so you have to be okay with the uncertainty, things that you have never seen before. We get bombarded with that on a daily basis and as entrepreneurs. So I think looking outside, when I was working for a large company, I would see all these entrepreneurs, included a few that I worked for, Fred Smith, who started FedEx, Jeff Bezos at Amazon. On the outside, they feel like, wow, look at that, how cool, right? They made so much money. But when you start, then you realize it's not that easy overall. But again, looking back, I wouldn't change anything. The next question I want to ask the panel is like, what was the biggest challenge that you faced personally? And then what support system were you able to pull in to help with that? Todd?
Yeah, I think Gene said it originally, but cash flow is predominantly your biggest challenge. I mean, there's, human capital is a challenge. There's a lot, but a good story. So I started in 2008. Really started hiring at that point, working out of my basement. By 2009, we were above a bar in a tiny little office space. And at the time, 2009, if you remember, there was a recession then, and so our clients generally stopped paying their bills. We were, a viable business. We were making a really good product, but we were having trouble with accounts receivable. And so it was now probably the second or third time that I was going to have trouble making payroll. And all my employees are sitting around on a Friday. Back then, we didn't have a payroll system. We used to hand cut checks. And I'm on the porch dialing for dollars, running around all day. And at that point, I had to sell my car, and I'm riding my bike or getting on the bus. And I was taking cash from any client I could get. And I only came up with half my payroll. And at the time, my payroll now is, millions every week. But at the time, it was, I think, about $5,000. I had $2,500 in the bank, and I need to come up with $2,500 to make payroll. And I'm standing on the porch, sweating. It's 5 o'clock, right? Everyone's sitting around waiting for their payroll checks. and I didn't know what to do. And, you know, at that point, I called everybody I knew. I tried to borrow whatever money I could, and I'm scanning the parking lot, just desperate. And I see the minivan of one of my employees that was probably a 20-year-old minivan, the most beater thing. I'm thinking in my head, he wears the exact same clothes every day, but I've paid him well. I'm like, I bet he has $2,500 in the bank. So I call my employee out to the porch and I said, listen, you know, we can't make payroll. And if I let everybody know that, the company's doomed. Can I borrow $2,500? And he said, yes, you can. So we threw my bike in his car. We ran to the ATM, right? Actually, we at that time, he wrote me a check and I put it in the bank and I ended up writing checks, but I told people, you know, hey, wait, my check needs to clear the bank. So I gave myself a little bit of time, but essentially borrowed the money from my employee to make payroll. And my accountant was in the know, and my one project manager was in the know. So I told them, I said, you can't cash your checks till Monday. I have just enough. I had the $2,500 for half the company. I got the check from my employee, put it in the bank, and I had just enough for the other half come Monday. And only half the company was any the wiser, and we made it through that payroll cycle. And I think if the whole company knew that we were struggling to make payroll, that would have been the end of us. And it was over $5,000, and I have millions of dollars in payroll now. So cash flow, to Gene's point, is absolutely critical. You know, and just one other quick story too. As we were growing really fast, and we've been a fairly fast growing company. We've been on the Inc. 5000 for 10 consecutive years organically. And with fast growth, we were a services company. We would do time and materials work. We'd work for 30 days and we'd invoice our clients. They'd pay 30, 45 sometimes. And I didn't understand with so much growth, why there was no money in the bank. And I had to sit down, scratch my head. I was a math computer science guy. I wrote software. I'm like, with all this growth, why don't we have any money in the bank? And then it dawned on me that we were doing the work. I was paying payroll every 2 weeks, but I wasn't getting paid for 2 months from our clients. So at that point, I said, you know what? I'm not going to finance my clients anymore. And I started doing deposits. And so they had to pay for a third of the project up front, a third in the middle, and a third on delivery. And that was the last time I ever really, you know, financed my clients and struggled in another way for cash flow. So definitely a major issue in a company.
So Gene and Todd, I wish I had gotten this advice 5 years ago. I would have done better. It's like you're telling my story. Come on. So I think, you know, when you have normal jobs, you don't get the whole cash flow. I mean, went to business school, but yeah, we read about it. You don't get it until you actually run into it and you realize, whoa, like what happened here? So similar situations we've run into as well. We actually ran into a similar situation, couldn't make payroll. We ended up doing a family and friends round, which all of us got together and said, okay, we'll do a promissory note. Business is strong, cash is coming, but not fast enough. The customers haven't paid. So that helped a lot. I think in our case, we lean on the team quite a bit. When a challenge comes up, we solve it as a team. We get together, and fortunately, we have a strong team that understands. And for the last 5 years, we've all stuck together in that case. But cash flow is the largest challenge, I would say. Anything else you'd like to add in terms of, Elliott, what kind of challenges, new challenges, any other challenges you've run into?
Yeah, for us, it's tech and capital. I think for every business, it's capital. Even if you think of a company like Tesla or SpaceX, Elon is always trying to get more money to help make things move faster. And listening to Gene and Todd, like the first thing that comes to mind is cash is king. So I think for us, capital is always an issue because we have this issue where our jewelry gets rented out at certain points. It's 90% rented out and we just need more jewelry. So we need money to buy the jewelry. So that's, you know, predominantly just a recurring theme for us. And we've gotten a lot of help with that in terms of, we brought on a third co-founder in 2019, Liana Kadisha, and she helped us raise money from some really top tier investors, including a couple of funds. And since then, we've been able to bootstrap and basically augment our capital through other means, borrowing and that sort. And then with tech, look, we didn't have anything. We couldn't use Shopify. There wasn't a platform that we can use for rental and subscription. So we had to design our own software to manage this aspect. And then we have we've had a lot of help from people in the rental space, like the folks at Black Tux and you know, that where we could see how they do things. And then, you know, Manish with Advatix is our vendor. We've had people like you guys help us to scale our ops and our warehouse, so we can go from servicing one customer to you know, thousands, and do thousands of orders as well.
Great. Ignacio, anything else would you like to add?
Well, I also remember one of the payroll programs that we had. We had 300 employees in the cannery, and that weekend I had to pay every one of them. So I didn't have enough money to pay them. So I had to issue checks and talk to the owner of the local store, you know, in the little town that we had, the cannery, and tell him, listen, all the employees are not being here, you know, cashing their checks for food. So wait for me a week till I get all the money from the companies that they owe me. So that was the only way that I could, you know, jump that weekend. And he paid, you know, all the checks, and 8 days later, I pay back, you know, all the payroll that I owe.
Great. You wanna-
Could I
Yeah.
add one comment?
Yeah.
You heard every one of these guys had a lot of pain over capital. And it was the creativity, whether it's getting down payments down on your services, whether it's bringing in a new investor. This is what an entrepreneur is, and that's what the fun is. I mean, when you think about having to solve this many problems, it's the greatest thing that life can give you, because you grow out of it. The one thing that I want to bring up is something very important, because I watch my kids, they listen to these podcasts all the time, and it drives me crazy that they don't take notes. And I had a mentor that told me, you can always tell somebody who's going to move ahead if they have a notepad and they're actually taking notes. And why is that important in business? Because in business, if you see 80% of the problems in advance, then, you know, you could probably make your business hum so much better than anybody else. And that comes from understanding the processes, whether it's cash flow, whether it's human resources, whether it's legal. There's some processes, marketing. And if you understand the basic processes of those, and you build a model in your mind, and if you go to the economics panel, which we have at 1 o'clock, the whole introduction is about understanding what countries are doing to our economics around inflation and what they're doing and fighting and using it for sanctions and everything else. If you don't understand the basic trends behind that, and by taking notes, you might hear one idea, if you have a process already in place that says, hey, look, a down payment early for a third of the, or right up front at half, you get another third, and when you finish a third, you go, God, that is damn brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? And these are the little things, but if you don't have a process and the issues, you can't do it. And so that's why I keep trying to get my kids to elevate one level, think in terms of processes, and then when you hear things, it fits in or it doesn't, and you can establish best practices that can prevent 80% of the problems that you might run into as businessmen. And if you're always solving problems, you're not delivering value to your clients.
Yep. That's great, Gene. One important point that I want to bring up, and I'm guessing that all of us will relate to it, that is when you start on your own, it's not just you. Your whole family gets involved. And that's such a critical piece of it. I still remember when I was thinking I'm going to go on my own, sat down at the dinner table with my wife and kids. And I had to get okay from my kids as well, because I was going to travel nonstop, and the level of support that's needed to succeed is at a different level completely. My wife is sitting here, and there's no way I could have launched without the full support, without her and the kids. They're fully involved in the business. They know what's going on. In fact, they are now teenagers, they help out in the warehouse as well. They go there and help us. It's a good learning exercise. So if you can share the support system outside of just CU, how critical is that and what's the impact of that?
Yeah, well, one thing you learn in business, actually, I got a couple points, but is that you have to be, very humble, open, and honest. And so just to share, I ended up a single father with 4 daughters. Now I have 7 because I'm remarried with 3 kids. But I was traveling all the time. And when you start up a startup, it is 24/7, and you can't think outside of that swim lane of this has to happen because I'm trying to get that next payroll. I'm trying to get that next customer. But my ex-wife couldn't take it anymore, so she bailed. And basically, I had 4 daughters that I ended up raising for a number of years. So that's a very important point, is that you have to make sure that your partner, your kids, your family's on board, and your staff too. We've dropped a couple names here: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Steve Jobs, another one. These are very much visionary leaders. And it's important to be a visionary. And one other point too, and speaking of operating models, we're moving to something called Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. I suggest you read the book Traction. It's a really good model to really grow a business around. But it talks about the visionary leader, and it talks about the integrator, and that's really your CEO and your COO. But these visionary leaders, Steve Jobs, everybody knew he was generally a jerk, but he was such a good visionary leader that everybody rallied behind him, and they made some of the most amazing products in the world. It doesn't cut it anymore. You can't just be that visionary leader. And nowadays they call it as a servant leader. You might have a great vision, but you're really serving your employees, you're serving your family, and you're serving your community. And so, back to Manish's point, it is very much your family. You are serving your family. Your family is not riding your coattails. And it's something really important to keep in mind, or you might burn out your wife.
My wife is here too.
Very supportive.
Very
We
supportive.
ought to interview her. What her feelings?
Yeah, for me, it's similar situation to Manish, where I'm very lucky that I have a wife that is really become a part of the business, that she knows everything that's going on, and she's your partner, and your family should be a part of it, I think, too. I think it's healthy to bring them in. And the reason for that is when things go bad, these are the people where you can go to and talk to and explain, some frustrations you have, and they'll help you make yourself feel better and maybe see things in a different light. So I really think that having that support system is really huge for your success. It's family, it's friends. And I as part of that also, it's making sure you're not burning yourself out. So you're going to work a lot if you do it alone, and it feels good, and it feels good to have that baby, but having a little bit of balance is important. You need to work out, you need to eat healthy, you need to see friends. Like we hear about these people that are working 24/7. It's not healthy. You need to have at least a little bit of balance. But yes, you're going to work a lot. You're probably going to work 18 hours some days. You're going to maybe work 8-hour days, and you're going to go to dinner. You're going to be on your phone the whole time, and then you're going to get home and you're going to work again. And then you're going to wake up. First thing you do is you check your emails. This is normal lifestyle, but you need to have a healthy body and a healthy mind as well.
Yeah, and there's series of funding. We're talking about capital markets, and there's series A, B, C, D. Before that, there's mezzanine or seed financing. Talking about support, who knows the name of the first round of funding you get?
Family and friends.
Friends and family.
Yeah.
That is literally your first round of funding comes from friends and family.
Gene, I know you have a lot to share on this. Ignacio, real quickly, and then we'll hand it over
Okay,
to Gene. Yeah.
I have a wonderful wife, and she understands me probably better than anybody. But when I lost my job, she went out and hired somebody to redo our house to the tune of $200,000. I'm out of work. And here's my wife going out spending money. And I'm going,
That's the motivation right
what
there.
the heck is going on? And that's exactly, she said, I'm going to motivate you to get off your ass and get to back to work. So, a partner that's supportive, that really understands you is very powerful. And I can't say enough about my wife because she raised our three kids. I was probably traveling 60 to 70% of the time. All three of our kids went to SC and they're all doing very well. And it wasn't because of me, it was because of her. So that partner and that support framework, you have to have a partner that's going to get on board with you. And they can really make you get up in the morning if you have to.
I'm watching the clock, so I want to leave a few minutes for the questions. But I think one of the big areas also is the culture that you're building. So you're not building just a business, you're defining the culture of the business as it starts to grow. How important is defining that? And at what point do you define the culture of the company? I guess another part would be how do you maintain it? So your thoughts about the culture of the business, Todd?
Yeah, absolutely. Before you even get into, a business plan, you need to think about your mission and your vision and your values, and really those core values, because they define your culture. And, particularly in tech in my world, my office, which is a ghost town these days, but, we have climbing walls and we have game stations and beanbag chairs, and you think that's your culture. It's not. That's like, just window dressing. The culture is the core values, and our core values, which we make, people repeat, is, inclusivity without exception, problem solving, perseverance, tenacity, right? These are your values. And if everybody knows them and shares them, then it makes for a great culture. And I'd mentioned EOS before, but EOS has what's called a people analyzer. And there's a number of ways to analyze your people and do they fit your core value. And what EOS does is they have something called a people analyzer where you literally check the boxes. Do these team members exhibit your core values? Because if they don't, they go toxic really fast. And then you end up having to replace them, which is costly to the business. So define that mission and that vision and those values, and make sure when you hire people, you're hiring them along those values. And that is what builds a good culture.
Yeah, I think the other folks at the panel can speak to it better because our team is small. And what I've learned is that especially when you're talking about a smaller team, it's constantly evolving. And I think for us, it's like for the founding team, like what values do we have, and making sure you find the right people that match your values. So a good hire that's a superstar, that's a team player, can really elevate your company. But if you make a bad hire, and I like Todd's word, it makes me cringe, but toxic is the word. It can be toxic, and it could really set you back in a number of ways. And I actually was working in finance before I started doing Switch, and finance is notorious for not having great culture. It's a very difficult kind of lifestyle, and it's go, go, go. And you're a lot of the time you're doing work where you're like, why am I doing this? Why do I have to prepare this? Why do I have to stay, until 10 p.m. doing this? So I think you don't want to become that person you left if you're going from corporate to entrepreneurship. And if you're going straight into entrepreneurship, just knowing, like, making sure you provide a good working environment. It's not about the window dressing, as he said. It's about how you do your work, how you treat your people, and creating values that you can constantly point to.
One thing I want to add is we are in 3 continents. So what works in US may not work in India or Latin America. So as we're defining the culture of the business, the local cultures have a big influence on that as well. So we quite often realize, oh, we didn't think of that because it means something else locally. So that's, I wanted to highlight. And then Ignacio, maybe you can also talk about Mexico. You're both in US and Mexico.
Right.
What kind of cultural differences that you have to
Well, you
manage
have
within
to
the
be
business?
surrounded by the working force that you choose, or get. In Mexico, they are, very hard workers, so you need the support of everybody. And like he says, the working environment is very important, so everybody feels comfortable, and do all the energy towards the goal that the company is asking for,
Gene?
In the logistics business, it's a huge network of different countries, people, cultures. And one of the things that's really important is spending time creating a vision that crosses these cultures and also the values, because if your values are so US centered, then maybe if you're scaling to become a global company, you have to be thinking a couple of moves ahead. And so this is where spending time really crafting your vision, your mission statement. And I know Nick and the team the board just finished crafting a new vision for the Randall Kendrick Supply Chain School. And one of the things that I was encouraging Nick to do was spend time with the directors, spend time with the faculty, spend time with any of the stakeholders, the business people, and the employees, and discuss what that means. And not only will it help people understand it themselves, but it'll help Nick understand it and give more flavor to what it really means. And what does it mean to be a student leader? Does it mean you're going to be an expert in supply chain, or is it going to be, I'm going to not only be an expert in supply chain, but learn these other business functions as well? So I learn breadth as well as depth. So I don't know what his ultimate definition is of that, but those are the things that you discuss. And I use the example of UPS. They're, I don't know what they have, 500,000, maybe 1 million employees. And they have this little brown book that the original founder of UPS has. And once a week, somebody has to give a lesson on one aspect of that book. And it's all about the values and the way they treat customers and the way that UPS does business. Now, what a great way to involve people in a process that helps them in their job and helps you keep that cultural fit. So, hey, look, if somebody like UPS can get every single employee involved and understand their corporate culture, and by the way, there's no better way to learn than to teach. So if an employee has to teach a chapter out of that brown book to all the other employees, they know it better than anybody else. So
That's great.
I'm being consistent, hopefully, with what all of you guys found.
In the interest of time, how about we, Gene, start from there and down here? One last thought for somebody who's thinking about going on their own, starting a company. What would be that one piece of advice that you'd like to add that we haven't touched on?
Well,
Anything? Yeah.
the number one thing is you need to serve a very specific client, because today there's so many scale players out there that'll wipe you out. You have to find, and I don't know if in business school they're still teaching this, but this you, and up here's the main scale players, and they're playing based on price, volume, just efficiency. And then as you come down, this is margin. Margin drops into a valley where you can't even survive. And then back up this side of that U are the niche players. And as an entrepreneur, you have to become a niche player. You have to understand who you're serving and the value you're serving them. Because if you move too far over into this side, you're going to be down in that valley where there's no margin. The big guys are going to crush you. And so know your target and how you're going to serve them. That's the basic of beginning. We could go through all the steps of growing a business and scaling it, but if you don't begin with that beginning, you have no chance.
Thank you, Gene. Ignacio, one thought?
Yes, like Gene mentioned, the customer attention is very important, and the personal attention to the client, with this pandemic, everything was done by Zoom, and in my days, everything was person to person, which is, very, very important. And as an entrepreneur, you're going to start with small clients that you have to treat them like a friends, actually, That's the only way that you can succeed really fast in this.
Yeah, I think if you build an excellent product, good things are going to follow. I think making sure you do that. I think constantly learning, you talk to people, read, listen to podcasts, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Like even today, I didn't know about the Dell cash conversion cycle. That's incredible. And I'm always striving to learn and get better at what I do and move fast. That is very important. The faster you move, you learn to fail, and failure equals learning and getting better at what you do.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off that, and then I have another point, but fail fast is really important, right? For every success out there, you have to ask that entrepreneur, how many times did they fail before that? And you think it's probably their first business and they just had, oodles of success with it, but it's just not true. Going back to the cash flow conversation, of my expenses, 401k is pretty expensive. Healthcare for all my employees expensive. But aside from those two, my 200 most expensive things are my people. Human capital is very expensive. And on that note, you've probably heard it before, but I can't stress it enough. You have to hire very, very slowly. You have to have the right people in the right seats and really define what role they're going to serve ahead of time. Hire slowly. And you need to fire fast. It's a lesson that all entrepreneurs, they hate firing people, but every time they do it, they're so much better off. And I hate to say it, but you have to learn that lesson because your human capital will bog down your business as far as your cash flow really fast if you don't hire slow and fire fast.
And folks who haven't experienced it might think like, why you start saying that? Well, I'll tell you that's reality, and indecision there can really hurt the business. What happens is then you start thinking about everybody else. So that's how I mentally justify when we have to take action, is to say, okay, that's one person versus everybody else. You got to take care of the people. One thing I'd say is, in my case, it's really the strong team that came together. What I did was start. Fortunately, a really strong team came together. So yes, it's hiring, but it's also providing that clear vision and then providing freedom for that team to go do their work and lead the business forward as well. So me, that's been a big differentiator there as well. With that, I'd open up to questions from the audience, and we will use the mic. Otherwise, audience online cannot hear you. I'll get the mic.
Hi. Good morning. I'm Ignacio. I work for the Boeing Company Corporation, but I do have my side job and I do make more money, by the way. I'm just waiting for have more stability to change full timing. You guys are really inspired. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us. My question is, especially now with this the summit, we are learning that digitalization is really important. However, we know there is a lot of choices over there. And I would like to know, maybe, I don't know if Todd could answer because you deal with apps, what we need to look for to choose, because we are looking for partnership, right? Not just an app, a startup that just start and, I don't know, in 1 year didn't work and, it's gone. What do, as an entrepreneur, need to look for all these options out there to really have something that is enduring, and then can be really a good choice for us?
You mean as far as what software you might use?
Yeah, some kind of tip that we can look, okay, this company is really more stable and I can really think it long-term, not just short-term.
Yeah,
Looking in
absolutely.
digitalization, like
Right, gotcha. So one concept, just, build versus buy is a very important concept too. So, you really have to look at the marketplace and you have to determine, is there software or, digitization software that you can leverage that the price is right? Because you can license something for a couple $1,000s a month. If you want to build it yourself, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So it's really important to say, is there a product out there in the market that serves our needs? And to do that, you have to start by writing down your requirements and figuring out exactly what your needs are, and then looking at that competitive landscape and saying, you know, of all the products, which ones are closest to our needs, right? And then you work with that vendor to make sure that their product's going to meet your needs, and you negotiate the price. If you can't find any software that meets your needs, then you might be in a situation where you have to build something, which happens a lot. But it's a very big investment. And for businesses that aren't in the software company and you build your own software, you're then in the software company, in the software business. So, you know, consider build versus buy. And if you're going to buy something, make sure it matches your requirements. And then it really comes down to just knowing what your needs are, and then looking at the competitive landscape and making sure there's a product that meets your needs.
I can add a little bit perspective that. So assume you've already built the software. And in the market, there are other suppliers that have the same software. What do you do in that case? Right, so I think what we did in that case is put ourselves in customer shoes when I was a customer buying software. And it was great, buy the software, but I was left on my own to go implement that. One of the changes we made is, hey, differentiate by staying with the customer until it's actually deployed and the results are achieved. Comes down to the value that you're able to provide to the customer. So I think whether you're on this side buying or you're providing a service, it's all about the business value and the financial impact that it has at the end.
Are you referring to more ERP systems, or are you referring to systems that might help you grow your business by offering more to your clients? Okay, for clients or for your internal ERP or the basic systems that run finance, HR, all those functions? Or are you talking about if you have a client and you have your product and then you want to support them with data and information about your product as they're consuming it?
Okay, so my business is more like a service, and I use a platform that they manage, basically bring the customers, and I have the service, but then I don't have so much. I storage the data, but I don't own. I don't like the way that the platform works, and I have some issues that I think if I have something for myself would be better. So and they do manage like the banking, the payment and everything.
Well,
Yeah. Well, and you want to own your customer. So it
Yes.
sounds like somebody's giving you the deal flow and then you're providing the service, but they're maintaining the customer and the data.
Yes, because the customer can go to any other.
Yeah, you want to own your customer. So your customer needs to be your customer. You need to own that data. Because otherwise that supplier can just cut you out and you're out of business.
well, the one thing that I was going to make, I agree with everything you're talking about when you're talking your ERP systems that are going to run. But what I've experienced in business is developers like to develop things and go into stuff that may not ever be monetized. And so one of the greatest things you have to figure out is talk to your customers. And if a customer's willing to finance it, then you've got a winner. But otherwise, you know, and I agree with you, you lead with product, but I disagree with you lead with product. If you lead with product, you increase the risk substantially, because now you've developed, spent all this money, and you can't find a client for it. The other way around is you find the client that wants the technology, let them help pay for it. You're going to have acceptance, and chances are you can monetize it by selling it to other clients because the needs will be similar.
Other questions in the audience?
Hello, can I ask one question? Yeah, sorry. So Mr. Ochi, you kind of mentioned about as a business, you should have your target customers being specific. But this summer, I work for a clothing company. Their current slogan or like plan is building a comfort world for everyone. So I just want to hear from you about what do you think about that? Do you think that's too broad? Should they specify their customers, or you have different opinion on that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So their slogan right now is building a comfort world for everyone. And you also mentioned earlier that like business should have like specific customers or like target customers like that. So it looks like the company I work for, they're not doing that. They're trying to get as many size as possible, like to like big size, smaller size, like to any special type of person, not only limited to like majorities or some people like that. Yeah. So what do you think about that?
I think that the question what I heard is how important is it to define the target customer? How broad can you be? Some of this company, the customer target base is too broad. It could be too broad.
Yes.
And what's the implications of that?
Well, one way, and I know this is kind of crude, but you go into Google and look how many people are searching for that particular thing that you're selling. And you start identifying those target clients that are researching it because they are likely the ones, if you've narrowed down your ideal client profile and what they need and what you can provide them, then you can go in and say, oh, wow, there's 30,000 people that have been searching this. Now I go to Google, maybe I have to pay them a little bit of money, but I get a list of all those people and I start communicating with them. I know that's a little bit crude, but it's a way of using the digital platforms instead of hiring a bunch of salesmen or distributors. I'm not saying your choice of distribution is a function of your product, the margins, all the other things, the complexity of your product. So just understanding that ideal client profile, everything else builds on that. And so, but if I was starting out and trying to figure out how big that market is for that, I just do a stupid Google search and see how many people are searching for that.
And one thing as an example, like, so at Mindgrub, our kind of vision statement is that we want our work on every device, right? Seems very broad. That doesn't mean we go after every single industry, every single customer out there, right? We have very specific industries that we go after, right? We go after utilities, retail and hospitality. And so, for instance, we built Wendy's app, right? And so retail and hospitality is one specific industry we go after, but to get on every device, we want to go after some very big enterprise brands, right? Because Wendy's is all over the world. There's a lot of people that have downloaded that app. So you can achieve both. You can still achieve a very broad focus, our work on every device, but to get there, you're very narrowly honing in on either industries or a certain buyer persona, right? So you have to basically achieve both. You have to have a broad vision, but a narrow focus.
Thank you.
Is this a brand new company?
No, it's a pretty big company.
Sometimes when you're starting, you don't know the answer. You can Google it or you just try it to all bases and figure out what kind of adoption do you start to get. So we've done that as well. Thank you though. Any other questions?
Hi, I guess this is more of a question for Todd. Are you familiar with the company Fiverr? It's like a gig-based,
Yes,
like,
yeah, absolutely.
so I found that it's kind of difficult to find like skilled people to like assist in starting a business, for example, like making a website or doing marketing. I was wondering if it's a good idea to maybe hire people on Fiverr to do those things, or if it's not a good idea.
No, absolutely. So there's a number of different software, whether it's Fiverr or it would take me a minute to rattle off, but there's, yeah, Upwork is another good one. You generally get what you pay for.
Okay.
So there is a lot of really good talent on those. Now, a lot of the talent is also inexpensive, kind of not effective
Cheap
talent. And particularly it's all over the world, those platforms. So, you generally will end up going through a couple developers before you find one that you just click with and works. But I suggest whereas then you're just buying an independent contractor and you're basically managing the process and you're going through it and you have to, really manage the design, the development, the QA yourself. There are also low cost providers that do everything turnkey. It might seem like a lot of money, but we have a partner that can do a $2,000 WordPress website. And you might be able to go on Fiverr and find somebody that can do WordPress at, $25 an hour overseas, but it's so much of your time to manage them, to get a decent product out of them, that even for a couple $1,000s, you can just go give it to a company turnkey and they'll make that website for you. So, and then, WordPress, like we're a WordPress VIP partner, we do sites for millions of dollars, right? But they're big enterprise, websites. So you get what you pay for, but you have to find the right provider at the right price point for your budget.
Yeah, and I guess my second question was, when you guys were all starting your businesses, did you also find it difficult to find talent, and how did you find the talent?
I taught for University of Maryland, and they have a school called University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, highly technical school. And I was teaching there at the time, but I hired students. So my first dozen employees were all students from the school. We met in the library and just started working there. And then, during the summer, basically school it out. So then we met in my basement and did work there. But there's a lot of raw talent in colleges. And they're, they get all-nighters, they get working hard. So, absolutely look to like pull some peers together from a school is a really good way to do it.
Yeah, and as far as both questions site is concerned, when I started, I didn't know where this was headed. Didn't want to spend the money. So I went to GoDaddy, bought the URL. Actually, their tool was pretty good. Within 2 hours, I had my first website up and running. Obviously, within months, we had to scrap it. Didn't work after that. It wasn't good enough for us. The other piece is that I think like Gene, where he had colleagues around, in my case, I tapped into everybody that I worked, the folks that I had closely worked with in the past at FedEx and Amazon, and we essentially put the band together again. And folks that also start to see the same vision and believe in it. It really is the strong team that came together in our case that helped.
Yeah, and similar to GoDaddy, Wix is really the platform now. That's really inexpensive. It's drag and drop. You can make your own website on Wix, so
What do
pretty
you think of
easy way to get in.
Squarespace? Is it also?
Yeah, similar to
Decent, yeah.
Squarespace too.
Okay.
Yeah. And, a lot of those Squarespace, Wix, if you're doing e-commerce, Shopify, they're really easy tools that are drag and drop. Bubble.io is another one. And you don't need a developer. You can, at least for your first offering, you can do it yourself.
However, fast forward to now, we have in 4 years about 100+ programmers in India that are our employees, and we're building websites for everybody else. So that's an exciting place to be at.
We actually hired. Our story is really funny. When I was doing banking, and then when we came up with the idea for Switch, I left my banking job. I moved in with my brother in an apartment. We were working out of our apartment. We basically had some jewelry from my mom and put up pictures of jewelry we didn't own yet. And we had a developer on Upwork, actually, that we were paying like $11 an hour to make a website for us. So we had this like really like, I think at the time it was nice, but looking back, it was like really bare bones website. And then we would call like publications, like we called the LA Times, we called Harper's Bazaar, we called a couple of these other folks, got the word out there, and then people would start ordering jewelry. So then we would go buy the jewelry, come back.
Drop shipping kind of, or is that?
No. We would ship it from our apartment. We would pack the jewelry up in our apartment, take it to the post office, and then ship it. And that's how we started. So like you got what you pay for. And very quickly we realized we can't be working with a web developer that like of that caliber for what we're doing. And since then we've upgraded. So I think it just depends on where you are in the journey. I think that there are some pluses of doing it on your own, but it depends on what kind of what you're making. Are you making a software or a website? It all depends. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I think this was special for me as well. I learned a lot from the panel. But the fact it wasn't just about sharing about the businesses, but sharing about personal life and family and so on. So I'm really thankful for the panel. Appreciate you being here and sharing your experiences with the audience. Thank you.
And thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.